What's going on, people? My name's Akala. I'm here at Calabash 2018. I've written a book called Natives, Race and Class in the Ruins of Empire, which is part memoir, part political essay, part historical investigation. Yeah, came out earlier this year. For me, it felt like the right time in life to write a book like this. I felt that I'd got to a level of maturity and understanding where you know, I'm sure there's many things I'm going to look back on and feel that this was wrong or that was wrong, but it felt like at least I'd taken enough of a, time to consider my thoughts, and it felt like time to write them down. And also I think this age, I'm 34 years old, it's a good time to reflect on sort of your life story, in the sense that obviously hopefully you're not even halfway through your life yet, but I'm old enough to see how life roughly panned out for most people I grew up with, in terms of all my brethren that got expelled from school, where that course led people. All my brethren that did X, Y, Z, where that course led people. All the people that were already middle class or had certain benefits when we were young growing up, how that has affected their life outcome, even if they made some of the same mistakes. So I'm able to sort of reflect on all of that at this age. Whereas at 22, everyone's just leaving uni or college. A man might have done his first little bird, hasn't really, you can't say things are panned out. So it felt like a good time for reflection on a micro level and on a macro level with everything that's going on in the world, with Trump, with Brexit, with the Windrush scandal, with Black Lives Matter, with all of these kind of different currents that have been going on in the world. It just felt like a time to put down on paper why I've come to the conclusions I've come to about the world, and what personal experiences led me to those conclusions. Well, what you're seeing lately in the British media is this idea of what they call the left behind white working class. And so what the British right-wing press are doing, as is very clear from, if you read all the articles, there's loads, I cite them in the book, they don't care about poor white kids. It's very, very clear from the tone of the articles. Poor white children have been neglected by the education system as long as Britain has had an education system. There was never a time in British history, since the founding of Oxford and Cambridge or the founding of Eton, where that quality of education was on offer to all of the people in the country. That literally was never part of the aim. So there's been this class differential in British education literally for 900 years. Yeah. What these right-wing people are concerned with is that black African kids in particular, if you read the articles you'll see that, are now doing better than poor white kids. Similarly, poor black African kids. What they really should be doing is saying, wow, Stormzy got 6 A stars at GCSE. Jeremy boasts about going uni. Why can't we as black English kids, if I can call it that, like those of us who've been in England 4 or 5 generations, who don't have parents born back in Jamaica or back in Ghana, are also doing really, really poorly at school, those who are us on free school meals. Why shouldn't we be saying, hold on a minute, the West African kids are doing really, really well and they're being pushed much harder? Why aren't we imitating them? Why aren't we aspiring to that? Instead, what's happening is people are saying the white kids are being left behind, but who are they being left behind by? They're being left behind by their own middle classes. They're not being left behind by the fact that, Kwame from Peckham works harder in school.
So what do you think rules society more today? Is racism or classism?
Well,
so before I would have said racism, but classism and racism is a lot more nuanced now.
Well, no, it always was. They were always related. Yeah. Like, even the idea of the white working class, I mean, millions of white people in Britain are immigrants from Poland, Italy, Germany, Ireland, in the same period of time that our grandparents were immigrants. My mother's family have been in Britain for thousands of years. Yeah. Yet some people will still say to me, go back where you came from. Clearly someone's taught them that me being half black or me being brown gives them the right to see me as a foreigner. Even though, as I've said to you before, Jamaica was ruled by England since 1655, and my maternal ancestors have been in Britain for thousands and thousands of years. So I would say that race and class, the British state plays them off one another consistently, and this creation of the white working class is part of that project, and the creation of ethnic minorities. Personally, the reason why I feel successful is because I've been able to achieve what I've achieved without selling out my principles, without changing the way I think. On a societal level, I would love to see the reduction of kind of such a waste of human capital. Poverty is expensive. It costs money to administer an underclass, as we do in Britain with prison population. Everyone who's in prison, we don't know what is in those people's heads, what they potentially could contribute. We would rather subsidize their prison time than elite education for people who are born in the wrong socioeconomic bracket. And so that's one of the things I'd like to see change. It become fashionable to be smart. It become normal for working class youths to think about philosophy and to think about governance and to understand the way society works at a deep level. But it's very, very dangerous for people who govern a society because they don't want people overeducated and thinking too much. I would love to see us be less willing to outsource our thinking to other people.
Can you imagine a world without colonialism?
No, no, but we have the world that we have. It's what do we do from here and where do we go from here? And I think that yeah, this book in a way is just a contribution to the discussion of those questions. Where do we go from here? How do we navigate the racial legacies we're left with? How do we navigate the class differentiations in British society and around the world? How do we navigate poverty and inequality and war and conflict in the 21st century? And I'm not saying I have the answers. I don't proclaim to have them at all. It's a conversation.
What sort of chapters resonate with you the most? What resonated with you the most when you died in this book, if there is one?
I think they're all very different. You know, we've got, you know, the opening chapter, Born in the 80s, which looks at what it was like to be born in the 80s. We've got a guide to denial, which, you know, the kind of stock responses people have when you confront them with, you know, a critique of racism. Yeah. Oh, stop going on about the past, or you're blaming me for what my ancestors did, or don't play the race card, or any of these sort of, it's almost like people had a conference and said, right, there's stock responses we're going to have all around the world to a kind of historical discussion. Naturally, no one ever says get over the past when I talk about Shakespeare, as I often frequently do. But, you know, I enjoyed writing the book as a whole. I get different things from different chapters. Kind of the Empire and Slavery chapter is a real historical chapter. The Police Peers in Teenage Years is a real reflection on growing up and growing up poor and racialized as black in British society. So I get different things from different aspects of the book.
Have we changed much that from the 80s?
Yeah, very much so. There are loads of things in British society that have got much, much better. There's loads of things that have got worse. I mean, the British prison population has grown by 82% since the 1980s. So it's, sorry, someone's phone's ringing. I'm just trying to think it. It's all right, let me left it there. Yeah, the British prison population has grown by 82% since the 1980s. At the same time, the overt racism, the kind of banana skin throw-in, the nigger chants that were very, you know, normal, you know, part of my language, you know, but, you know, attacks, violent attacks towards Caribbean and Asian people are probably much rarer than they were in the 1980s. So there are lots of ways the society has progressed for sure. But there's still things to be navigated.
You mentioned Trump and Brexit. Do you think that the two results are synonymous?
Well, a lot of people have linked them. I mean, I look at this in the book, what they call Trexit. And so there is, yes, that's the technical term, that's what people call it, yeah. So there is a discussion in the book of how the two phenomenons were related and what we can learn from the relation of the two phenomena.
Yeah. What do you want people to gain from this book or gather from this book?
Hopefully new perspective, insight, knowledge, you know, a sense of personal story. And even if people disagree, I'd love for people to disagree. As yet, you know, the right-wing press is not really engaged. They haven't, you know, I would love for someone to go through it.
I mean, they're not really necessarily your...
No, but my thing is, I would love for people to go through it and make a thorough refutation based on the evidence, based on the... But most people who, as you've seen from my Twitter, most people who argue with me, there's plenty of people who know more than I do about a whole load of stuff, but most of the people who choose to argue with me are too intellectually lazy to even read the evidence I'm putting together. They just come with the same stock responses. Stop making excuses, don't go on about the past, you got a chip on your shoulder. These are all kind of adjective-based responses. You know, these are slogans. These are not a critique of what I'm actually saying. And so I'd be very impressed if someone goes through the book and says this is wrong because X, Y, Z. This report was faulty because the data collection was wrong or their methodology was mistaken, or have you considered this extra piece of evidence? But no one's coming with that yet. It's like people are not on it.
How much research went into doing this book then? It's quite extensive.
Well, the bibliography is just a small fraction, and you know, it's you know, 40 pages of notes, which is, you know, I had to cut it down. It's a popular book, so you know, quite a lot of research went into it.
How long did it take to?
Well, in a sense, I mean, it's partly my life story, so it's a story I've been thinking about my whole life, but it's not really a life story. It's pieces, just certain episodes. But the actual writing process was probably about a year, on and off. Yeah, on and off. Yeah. My good friend MK Asante says when you get information, you have an obligation. If you don't know, you don't know, right? But if you get information that XYZ thing is happening, it's not correct, it's not just, it's messed up. What do you do with that information? Do you organize? Do you try and set up a school? Do you mentor young people? What within your immediate reality can you do to make your contribution to your community? And if this information that's in this book can help you to figure that out, can be a bit of a guidance, can provoke something in you, wonderful. But I can't tell you what to do with that information.